The metal folding chair screeched against the linoleum floor as Chen stood up, her voice shaking but determined as she addressed the half-empty room at Millbrook's town meeting. "Nobody shows up anymore," she said, gesturing to the sparse crowd of 17 people scattered across a space meant for 200. "This town used to care about its future, but look at us now." She had prepared a whole speech about the community center renovations, about the after-school programs that desperately needed funding, about the senior citizens who had nowhere to gather during the harsh New England winters. But standing there, looking at the empty rows of chairs, the words caught in her throat. Mayor Davidson gave her a sympathetic nod from his spot at the front table, but even his eyes held resignation. This was how things were now in their small manufacturing town. People were too tired, too busy working multiple jobs, or had simply given up on believing their voices mattered. Emma was 26 years old and had returned to Millbrook 3 years ago after her mother's stroke. She had left behind a promising career in urban planning in Boston, but family came first. Her mother had recovered mostly, though her left side remained weak, and Emma had thrown herself into volunteer work, trying to make the town she grew up in feel like home again. She worked part-time at the library and spent her evenings organizing community initiatives that fewer and fewer people attended. She gathered her papers with trembling hands and sat back down, feeling the familiar weight of futility settling on her shoulders. The meeting dragged on for another 20 minutes, covering budget shortfalls and road repairs, before Mayor Davidson mercifully adjourned. Emma was folding her notes when she noticed a man still sitting 3 rows back. He was around 30 years old, tall with dark hair and sharp features, wearing a navy wool coat that looked expensive even from a distance. She had never seen him before, which was unusual in a town of only 4,000 people. He stood and walked toward her with an easy confidence that seemed out of place in the dreary community center. "Emma Chen," he asked, his voice deep and warm. "I'm Daniel Mercer. I wanted to say I thought what you said was brave." Emma blinked, surprised. "Thank you. Are you new to Millbrook?" "Just visiting," he said, though something in his expression suggested there was more to it. "I grew up about an hour from here. My company is considering some investments in the region, and I wanted to get a feel for the local communities." "Your company?" Emma asked, pulling her worn cardigan tighter around herself. "Manufacturing," he said simply. "We produce industrial equipment. What you said about people not showing up, it resonated with me. My father used to say that a community dies when people stop believing they can make a difference." Emma felt a spark of something she had not experienced in months, maybe hope, maybe just the relief of being heard. "Your father sounds wise." "He was," Daniel said, and the past tense told its own story. "Listen, I know this is forward, but would you be willing to grab coffee sometime this week? I would love to hear more about what you're trying to do here. If my company does invest in the area, it would help to understand what the community actually needs." Emma hesitated. She was not in the habit of meeting strange men for coffee, but there was something genuine in his eyes. Besides, if his company really was considering investing in Millbrook, it could mean jobs, economic revitalization, hope. "Sure," she said. "There's a diner on Main Street, Rosie's. Do you know it?" "I'll find it," Daniel said with a smile that transformed his serious face. "Tomorrow at 10. "I'll be there," Emma agreed. She watched him leave, noting the way he held the door for Mrs. Patterson, the 78-year-old retired teacher who never missed a town meeting. Emma gathered her things slowly, her mind already spinning with possibilities. Maybe this was exactly what Millbrook needed, Outside investment. Someone who actually cared. She pushed down the tiny voice that wondered why a manufacturing executive would personally attend a small-town meeting. That night, Emma sat with her mother in their small two-bedroom house on Elm Street, the same house where Emma had grown up. Patricia Chen was watching her evening game shows, her left hand resting in her lap, the fingers curled slightly from the stroke. Emma heated up leftover chicken and rice, her mind still on the stranger from the meeting. "You seem distracted," her mother observed, her speech still slightly slurred but much improved from 3 years ago. "I met someone interesting tonight," Emma said, bringing 2 plates to the living room. "At the town meeting, a businessman who says his company might invest here." Her mother's expression grew cautious. "Be careful, sweetheart. Big promises from outsiders usually mean disappointment." "I know, Mom," Emma said, settling onto the couch beside her. "But what if it's real? What if someone actually wants to help?" Patricia reached over with her good hand and squeezed Emma's. "You have such a big heart. I just don't want to see it broken again." Emma knew her mother was thinking about Marcus, her ex-boyfriend who had promised to move to Millbrook with her but left her at the last minute, choosing his career over their relationship. That had been 3 years ago, and Emma had not dated anyone seriously since. There had been a few awkward dinners with local guys she had known since high school, but nothing that sparked anything real. The next morning, Emma arrived at Rosie's diner at 9:45, wearing jeans and a cream sweater, her long black hair pulled back in a ponytail. She had debated dressing up but decided against it. This was a business meeting, sort of. She slid into a booth by the window and ordered coffee from Rosie herself, who raised an eyebrow when Emma said she was waiting for someone. Daniel arrived exactly at 10, and Emma noticed he had dressed down too, wearing dark jeans and a gray Henley under his coat. He looked younger this way, more approachable. He slid into the booth across from her and ordered black coffee. "Thanks for meeting me," he said. "I know it must seem strange, a random guy showing up at a town meeting." "A little," Emma admitted. "But we'll take interest from anyone at this point. So tell me about your company. What kind of investments are you considering?" Daniel wrapped his hands around his coffee mug, and Emma noticed they were strong hands, calloused in a way that surprised her for an executive. "We manufacture precision components for agricultural and construction equipment. We've been based in Connecticut, but we're looking to expand. The real estate market here is affordable, and there's a workforce that needs employment. It could be mutually beneficial." "Mutually beneficial," Emma repeated, trying not to sound skeptical. "That's the kind of corporate speak that usually means you'll pay minimum wage and expect the town to give you tax breaks." Daniel laughed, a genuine sound that made his eyes crinkle. "Fair point. I deserved that. Let me be more direct. Yes, we would want some incentives, that's standard, but we're not a massive corporation. We employ about 300 people currently, and an expansion here could mean 70 to 100 new jobs. Good jobs, with benefits and competitive wages. My father started the company 40 years ago, and he always believed in taking care of the people who work for you." Emma studied him, trying to read whether he was sincere. "You keep talking about your father in the past tense." Daniel's expression shifted, becoming more vulnerable. "He passed away 2 years ago. Heart attack. I took over the company, and I've been trying to honor his legacy while also moving us forward. He grew up poor, worked his way through night school, built everything from nothing. He never forgot where he came from." "I'm sorry," Emma said softly. "That must have been hard." "It was," Daniel admitted. Still is some days, but it also gave me clarity about what matters. So tell me about you. What brought you back to Millbrook? You seem like someone who could be anywhere. Emma felt herself flush slightly. My mom had a stroke 3 years ago. I was working in Boston, doing urban planning, but she needed me. My dad passed when I was 12, so it's just us. I came back to take care of her, and I've stayed because, well, someone needs to fight for this place. That's incredibly selfless, Daniel said, and there was admiration in his voice that made Emma's heart beat a little faster. It's just what you do for family, Emma said, deflecting. But I'd be lying if I said it hasn't been hard. This town is dying, and nobody seems to notice or care. The factory that employed half the town closed 5 years ago. Young people leave as soon as they graduate. The ones who stay are working 2 or 3 jobs just to survive. Daniel leaned forward, his attention completely focused on her. What would you do if you had unlimited resources? If you could save Millbrook, what would that look like? Emma felt something unlock inside her, all the dreams and plans she had been carrying alone suddenly pouring out. Jobs, obviously. Good jobs that pay a living wage, but also community. We need spaces where people can gather, programs for kids and seniors, reasons for people to invest in this place emotionally, not just economically. The community center is falling apart. The pool has been closed for 3 years. We used to have a summer concert series in the park, but we can't afford it anymore. I know that sounds frivolous compared to economic survival, but culture matters. Pride matters. People need to remember why this place is worth fighting for. She stopped, suddenly embarrassed by her passion. Sorry, I get carried away. Don't apologize, Daniel said firmly. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Economics without community is just numbers on a spreadsheet. My father used to say that a company is only as strong as the town it operates in. They talked for 2 hours, their coffee growing cold and then being refilled multiple times by Rosie, who kept shooting curious glances their way. Daniel asked detailed questions about the town's infrastructure, its workforce, its history. Emma found herself relaxing, enjoying the conversation in a way she had not enjoyed talking to anyone in years. He was intelligent and thoughtful, but more than that, he seemed to genuinely care about what she was saying. When they finally left the diner, the November sun was high and pale in the sky. Daniel walked with her toward the library where she had a shift starting at 1. "Can I see you again?" Daniel asked as they reached the old brick building. "I'm staying in the area for a few weeks, doing research. I'd like to continue this conversation." Emma felt a flutter of something that might have been excitement or might have been fear. "I'd like that," she said. "But I should be clear. I'm not just interested in your company. If you're going to be around, I want to know you're serious. We've had people come through before with big promises." "I understand," Daniel said. "How about this? I'll be at the next town meeting and the one after that. I'll show up and you can decide for yourself if I'm serious." Emma smiled despite herself. "The next meeting is in 2 weeks. Then I'll see you in 2 weeks, Daniel said. "But maybe we could grab dinner before then. Not business, just dinner." Emma's heart raced. This was definitely not business anymore. "Okay," she said, "just dinner." She watched him walk away, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. She had no idea who Daniel Mercer really was, what he really wanted, or whether his company would actually invest in Millbrook. But for the first time in 3 years, she felt something other than tired resignation. She felt possibility. Her shift at the library was quiet, giving her too much time to overthink everything. Sarah, her coworker and closest friend since high school, cornered her during the afternoon lull. "Rosie texted me," Sarah said, grinning. "She said you were having coffee with a gorgeous stranger this morning. Spill." Emma rolled her eyes but could not help smiling. "His name is Daniel. He's a businessman looking at potential investments in the area. We were just talking about the town." "For 2 hours?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. She was 27, married to her high school sweetheart, and constantly trying to set Emma up with any single man within a 50-mile radius. "And Rosie said he looked at you like you were the only person in the world." "Rosie needs to mind her own business," Emma said, but her cheeks were warm. "It's not like that. He's just visiting." "Uh-huh," Sarah said skeptically. "Well, visiting or not, when's the last time you let yourself have dinner with an attractive man?" "He hasn't actually asked me to," Emma trailed off. "Okay, fine. We're having dinner sometime this week." "Happy," Sarah squealed, causing Mrs. Henderson to shush them from the romance section. "I'm ecstatic. You deserve this, Emma. You deserve to have someone look at you like you matter." "I matter without a man," Emma said automatically, but Sarah just smiled. "Of course you do, but you also deserve to be happy." That evening, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, it's Daniel. Rosie gave me your number. Hope that's okay. How about dinner Thursday? There's supposed to be a good Italian place in Riverside." Emma stared at the message for a full minute before responding. "That's okay. Thursday works. Pick me up at 7. She immediately regretted giving him her address, but then figured if he was planning to invest in the town, he could probably find out where she lived anyway. Besides, something in her gut said she could trust him, and Emma had always been someone who listened to her instincts. The next few days passed in a blur of anticipation and anxiety. Emma found herself thinking about Daniel at odd moments, remembering the way he had leaned forward when she talked, the genuine interest in his eyes, the warmth of his laugh. She tried to remind herself that he was just a businessman passing through, that she should not get attached, but her heart was not listening to logic. Thursday evening arrived cold and clear. Emma changed outfits 3 times before settling on a navy dress and brown boots, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her mother watched from the doorway with a knowing smile. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Patricia said. "He must be special." "It's just dinner, Mom," Emma protested weakly. "Nothing is ever just anything with you," her mother said gently. "You care about everything too much. Just try to have fun tonight, okay? Let yourself be young." Daniel arrived exactly at 7, holding a small bouquet of autumn flowers. He was wearing dark slacks and a charcoal sweater, and Emma's breath caught a little at how handsome he looked. He greeted her mother with respectful warmth, and Patricia's eyes softened in approval. The drive to Riverside took 30 minutes, and they filled it with easy conversation. Daniel told her about growing up in a small town, not unlike Millbrook, about working in his father's factory during summer breaks, about studying engineering in college, before realizing his strengths were more in management and vision than technical details. "What about you?" he asked as they pulled into the restaurant parking lot. "Did you always want to do urban planning?" "I always wanted to fix things," Emma said. "When I was a kid, I used to reorganize my entire room every few months, convinced there was a perfect configuration that would make everything better." Urban planning felt like that on a bigger scale. Making spaces work better for people, solving problems through design. "Do you miss it?" Daniel asked, and the question felt weighted with genuine curiosity. "Sometimes," Emma admitted. "But I'm doing similar work here, just on a smaller scale and without the paycheck." She laughed to lighten the mood. The prestige of volunteer work in a dying town. Daniel reached across the console and briefly touched her hand. For what it's worth, I think what you're doing is more impressive than any city project. It's easy to renovate a neighborhood when you have a massive budget and political support. It's a lot harder to fight for a place everyone else has written off. Emma felt tears prick her eyes unexpectedly and blinked them away. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Dinner was wonderful." The restaurant was small and intimate, with candles on the tables and soft music playing. They ordered wine and pasta, and the conversation flowed as naturally as it had at the diner. Daniel was funny and self-deprecating, telling stories about factory mishaps and learning curves when he first took over the company. Emma found herself laughing more than she had in months. "So what does your company actually do?" Emma asked over tiramisu they were sharing. "I know you said precision components, but what does that mean?" Daniel's eyes lit up in a way that told her he loved what he did. "We make the parts that make other machines work better. Hydraulic systems, gear assemblies, custom components for specialized equipment. It's not glamorous, but it's essential. Farmers need reliable equipment. Construction companies need machinery that won't fail on a job site. We make the pieces that keep those machines running." "And you're the CEO of this company?" Emma asked, something in his passion making her curious about the scope. "Yes," Daniel said, then seemed to hesitate. "I should probably be more upfront about something. Mercer Industrial isn't just a small company anymore. We've grown significantly in the past decade. We do about $200 million in annual revenue, and we employ people across 3 states. I don't usually lead with that because people treat you differently when they know." Emma set down her fork, processing this information. "So you're not just a businessman, you're wealthy." "I'm comfortable," Daniel said carefully. "But I'm also committed to doing business the right way. I could have moved operations overseas years ago, cut costs, maximized profits. But that's not who my father raised me to be. We pay our people well, we invest in safety and training, and we try to be good corporate citizens. Money means nothing if you lose your integrity getting it." Emma studied him, looking for signs of deception or arrogance, but she saw only sincerity and maybe a hint of vulnerability, as if he was worried she would judge him for his success. "I don't care that you're wealthy," she said finally. "I care whether you mean what you say about helping Millbrook. Because if you're just playing around, if this is some kind of hobby project you'll abandon when it gets complicated, I need to know now." Daniel met her eyes directly. "I don't make promises I can't keep. If I invest in Millbrook, it will be because I believe in the town and in the people there. It will be because I think we can build something sustainable and good. And if I'm being completely honest, it will be partly because of you." Emma's heart hammered. "Because of me?" "You care so much," Daniel said softly. "When you spoke at that town meeting, I saw someone who hasn't given up even when she has every reason to. That kind of dedication is rare. It made me want to show up, to be someone worth your time and trust." Emma did not know what to say. The intensity of his gaze, the honesty in his words, it was overwhelming in the best way. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "With any of this, I just keep trying because I don't know what else to do." "That's exactly why it matters," Daniel said. He reached across the table and took her hand, and Emma let him. His palm was warm and solid against hers. "Can I keep seeing you? Not for business meetings or town planning, just to see you." Emma knew she should be cautious. She barely knew this man. He lived hours away and had a massive company to run. This could not possibly work long term. But when she looked at him, all her logical objections faded away. "Yes," she said, "I'd like that." They drove back to Millbrook slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. Daniel walked her to her door, and there was a moment where Emma thought he might kiss her. But instead he just squeezed her hand and promised to call her tomorrow. Inside, Emma leaned against the closed door, her heart racing. Her mother appeared in her wheelchair, having transitioned to it for evening mobility. "I like him," Patricia declared. "He has kind eyes." "It's one date, Mom," Emma said, but she was smiling. "It's a beginning," her mother corrected. Over the next week, Daniel became a constant presence in Emma's life. He showed up at the library during her shifts, sometimes just to talk for a few minutes, sometimes staying for an hour to help reshelf books. He attended a planning committee meeting for the community center renovations and asked intelligent questions. He had lunch with Mayor Davidson and came away with detailed notes about the town's needs and opportunities. But more than his involvement in town business, he showed up for Emma. When her mother had a doctor's appointment in the city, Daniel drove them and waited for 3 hours without complaint. When the library's furnace broke on a particularly cold day, he showed up with space heaters and helped Emma keep the building warm enough to stay open. He was thoughtful and attentive in ways that made Emma's defenses crumble bit by bit. 2 weeks after they met, Daniel attended his second town meeting. This time, 23 people showed up, word having spread that a potential investor was taking interest in the community. Daniel sat in the front row, and when the public comment period opened, he stood and introduced himself properly. "My name is Daniel Mercer, and I'm the CEO of Mercer Industrial. Some of you may have heard that we're exploring an expansion into this area. I want to confirm that we're serious about this possibility. Over the past 2 weeks, I've been meeting with local leaders, touring available properties, and most importantly, listening to what this community needs. If we move forward, I want to do it in partnership with Millbrook, not as outsiders imposing our vision." Emma watched the room's energy shift. People were sitting up straighter, paying attention. Hope was a dangerous thing, but it was also contagious. Mayor Davidson asked Daniel to elaborate on the timeline and scope, and Daniel pulled out actual plans, blueprints and projections he had been working on. "We're looking at a 60,000 square foot facility that would initially employ 75 people, with room for growth. We're prepared to invest in workforce training programs, to partner with the community college for skills development. We want to hire locally as much as possible." The questions came fast then, about wages and benefits and environmental impact. Daniel answered each one directly, not hiding the challenges but painting a picture of genuine possibility. Emma felt tears pricking her eyes as she watched her neighbors lean forward, engaged in a way they had not been in years. After the meeting, people clustered around Daniel, and Emma hung back, letting him interact with the community. Mrs. Patterson grabbed Emma's arm as she passed. "You brought him here," the older woman said. "This is because of you." "I just met him," Emma protested. "And you made him care," Mrs. Patterson said firmly. "I've lived in this town for 78 years. I know when something special is happening. Don't let this one get away, dear." Emma laughed despite the emotion clogging her throat. "I'll do my best." Daniel finally extricated himself from the crowd and found Emma waiting by the door. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and he looked energized in a way that made him even more attractive. "That went well," he said, grinning. "That was incredible," Emma corrected. "You gave them hope." "We gave them hope," Daniel said. "I wouldn't be here if not for you. He glanced around at the emptying room, then back to her. "Can we go somewhere? I want to talk to you about something." They ended up at the town park, sitting on a bench overlooking the empty pool that had been drained 3 summers ago and never refilled. The November night was cold enough to see their breath, and Daniel pulled off his suit jacket and draped it over Emma's shoulders despite her protests. "I need to tell you something," Daniel said, his voice serious. "The expansion in Millbrook, it's real, I'm committed to it, but I need you to understand why." Emma's stomach tightened with nerves. "Okay. When my father died, I inherited everything. The company, the money, the responsibility. And for the first year, I just went through the motions, trying to keep everything running the way he would have wanted. But I was miserable. I was successful and lonely and unsure what any of it was for." He turned to face her fully. "Then I came to that town meeting, honestly just doing due diligence on a potential location, and I saw you stand up and say that nobody shows up anymore. And something in me broke open." Emma's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "I have been showing up for you," Daniel continued. "To these meetings, to this town, to my own life in a way I haven't in 2 years. You made me remember why any of this matters. And I know we've only known each other for 2 weeks, and I know this is crazy fast, but I'm falling for you, Emma. I think I started falling for you the moment I heard you say that someone needed to care." Emma felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared you'll leave. That this will end, that I'll lose myself in this and forget how to stand on my own." "Then don't lose yourself," Daniel said, reaching up to wipe her tears with his thumb. "Keep being exactly who you are. That's who I'm falling for. The woman who fights for her town, who came home for her mother, who refuses to give up even when everything seems impossible. I don't want to change you. I just want to be someone who shows up for you the way you show up for everyone else." Emma kissed him then, reaching up to pull his face to hers. It was not smooth or practiced, just desperate and honest and full of all the loneliness and hope she had been carrying. Daniel wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, and for the first time in 3 years, Emma felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. They sat in the park for another hour, wrapped in his jacket and each other, making quiet promises about taking things slow even as they both knew it was already too late for slow. They were already in too deep, already tangled in each other's lives and hearts. Over the next month, Daniel became a fixture in Millbrook. He rented a small house on the edge of town, explaining that he needed to be on-site to oversee the expansion plans, but Emma knew it was also because he wanted to be near her. He split his time between Millbrook and Connecticut, managing his company remotely when he could and driving back for essential meetings. The relationship deepened naturally, inevitably. They had dinner with Emma's mother at least twice a week, and Patricia adored him. Daniel helped around the house without being asked, fixing the temperamental garage door and replacing the ancient water heater. He never made Emma feel like she or her mother were charity cases, just treated them like family. Emma met Daniel's mother, Catherine, when she drove up from Connecticut for Thanksgiving. Catherine was elegant and warm, with Daniel's same kind eyes. Over turkey at the Chen house, with both mothers beaming at their children, Emma felt the weight of the future settling on her shoulders in a way that felt right rather than heavy. "I'm so glad Daniel found you," Catherine said as they washed dishes together while Daniel helped Patricia into the living room. "He's been lost since his father died. You brought him back to himself." "He saved me too," Emma said quietly. "I didn't realize how alone I felt until I wasn't alone anymore." The town expansion moved forward rapidly. environmental studies, zoning approvals, groundbreaking scheduled for spring. Mercer Industrial officially announced the Millbrook facility in January, and the news hit the regional papers. Suddenly, their small town was a success story, a model for rural revitalization. Emma found herself in meetings with state representatives and economic development agencies, Daniel always at her side, deferring to her expertise on community needs. The attention was overwhelming but also validating. Everything Emma had been fighting for was finally being taken seriously. The state approved a grant for community center renovations. A regional foundation offered funding for the summer concert series. The pool would reopen in time for summer. People were moving back to Millbrook, young families buying up the affordable houses, local businesses reopening. Through it all, Daniel showed up. To every meeting, every planning session, every small victory. He was there when the town council approved the final permits for the factory. He was there when they broke ground on the community center renovations. He was there on a random Tuesday when Emma had a particularly hard day and just needed someone to hold her while she cried about nothing and everything. 6 months after they met, on a warm May evening, Daniel took Emma back to the park where they had first kissed. The pool was being filled again, the sound of rushing water a promise of summer. He had set up a picnic on the same bench, complete with wine and cheese and the strawberries Emma loved. "I have something to ask you," Daniel said as the sun set over the trees, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Emma's heart leaped. "Okay." Daniel got down on one knee, pulling a ring box from his pocket. "Emma Chen, you taught me how to show up. For myself, for other people, for a life that matters. Every day with you is a reminder of what's worth fighting for. I want to keep showing up for you for the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" Emma was crying and laughing at the same time, nodding before she could even get the words out. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." The ring was perfect, a simple diamond on a platinum band, elegant and understated just like Emma preferred. Daniel slipped it onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood and pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. They got married in September, a year and a week after they had first met. The ceremony was in the park, with the whole town invited. 300 people showed up, filling the space that had once held only 17 at a town meeting. Mayor Davidson officiated, and Sarah was Emma's maid of honor, and Catherine cried through the entire ceremony. Patricia was able to walk Emma down the aisle with only a cane for support, her physical therapy having paid off in ways the doctors had not thought possible. Emma wore a simple white dress with lace sleeves, and Daniel wore a gray suit that matched his eyes, and when they said their vows, they promised to keep showing up for each other through whatever came. The reception was held in the newly renovated community center, the same building where Emma had once stood up and said nobody shows up anymore. Now it was full of people dancing and celebrating, proof that a community could come back from the edge when people decided to fight for it. "I love you," Daniel whispered as they danced their first dance as husband and wife. "Thank you for teaching me how to care about something bigger than myself." "I love you too," Emma said, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for showing up." They honeymooned in Italy, 2 weeks of art and food and uninterrupted time together. But Emma was eager to get home, to the life they were building in Millbrook. They had bought a house on Maple Street, a beautiful old Victorian that needed work but had good bones. Daniel had insisted on staying in Millbrook rather than asking Emma to move to Connecticut, and he ran Mercer Industrial from a home office, driving to the main facility only when absolutely necessary. The Millbrook factory opened in October, 1 year after Daniel's first town meeting. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew state officials and media attention. But for Emma, the most important part was watching her neighbors file in for their first day of work. 78 jobs filled by local residents, with training programs bringing in 20 more people over the next 6 months. Emma had been hired by the town as their first director of community development, a paid position created specifically for her. She finally had a salary that matched her passion, and she threw herself into the work with renewed energy. After-school programs launched. Senior citizen programming expanded. The summer concert series returned, and on warm July evenings, the park filled with families and music. 2 years after their wedding, Emma discovered she was pregnant. She told Daniel over breakfast on a random Tuesday, just placing the positive test on the table next to his coffee. He stared at it for a full 10 seconds before looking up at her with tears in his eyes. "We're having a baby." His voice was reverent, awed. "We're having a baby," Emma confirmed, and he swept her into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen. Their daughter, Lily Catherine Mercer, was born on a snowy January morning. She had Emma's dark hair and Daniel's gray eyes, and she was perfect. Patricia moved in with them for the first few months to help, and the house was chaos and joy in equal measure. Daniel was an incredible father, getting up for night feedings and changing diapers without complaint. He conducted video meetings with Lily sleeping in a carrier strapped to his chest. He built her a nursery with hand-painted stars on the ceiling and a mobile that played soft music. Emma watched him rock their daughter to sleep one evening, his large hands so gentle, his voice soft as he sang a lullaby, and she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This life, this family, this community, it was everything she had dreamed of and more. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked, noticing her watching from the doorway. "I'm thinking about that town meeting," Emma said softly. "When I stood up and said nobody shows up anymore, I felt so hopeless that night. And then I showed up," Daniel said with a smile. "And then you showed up," Emma agreed. "And you kept showing up. You showed up for me, for this town, for the life we've built. You taught me that one person caring can change everything." "You taught me that first," Daniel said, carefully placing Lily in her crib. He crossed to Emma and pulled her into his arms. "You were the one who cared when nobody else did. You were the one who made me believe that showing up mattered." They stood together in the doorway, watching their daughter sleep, the house quiet around them. Outside, Millbrook was thriving. The factory had expanded, adding another 50 jobs. New businesses were opening on Main Street. Young families were moving in, drawn by affordable housing and good employment. The community center hosted events every night of the week. The pool would open for its 3rd successful summer season in a few months. Emma had just been approached by a regional coalition to help other small towns develop revitalization plans. She was considering it, the idea of spreading what they had learned in Millbrook to other communities that needed hope. Daniel was encouraging her to take the opportunity, offering to adjust his schedule to handle more of the childcare. "We should have another one," Daniel said suddenly. Emma pulled back to look at him. "Another baby? Lily is only 3 months old." "Not right now," Daniel laughed, "but eventually, I want a big family. I want this house full of kids and noise and love. I want to give them the childhood I had, where family was everything." "I want that too," Emma said, feeling tears prick her eyes. "I want them to grow up in a town that cares, where people show up for each other. I want them to see what we built here and know that they can make a difference wherever they go. They'll see that every day just by watching you, Daniel said, kissing her forehead. 3 years later, they had another daughter, Sophie. She had Emma's eyes and Daniel's mischievous grin. Lily was an affectionate big sister, constantly wanting to help with the baby. The house on Maple Street was indeed full of noise and love. Toys scattered across the floor, children's laughter echoing through the rooms. Patricia lived with them permanently now, her mobility more limited but her spirit undiminished. She spent her days reading to the girls and helping Emma with planning work when she could. Daniel had built a first-floor addition to the house with a bedroom and bathroom designed for Patricia's needs, refusing to even discuss the idea of her living anywhere else. "Family takes care of family," he said firmly when Emma worried they were overwhelming him. "Your mother gave up everything to raise you. Now it's our turn to show up for her." On their 5th wedding anniversary, Daniel surprised Emma with a completely renovated park. The pool had new filtration systems and updated facilities. The playground had been expanded. But the centerpiece was a gazebo built where their bench used to be, with a plaque that read, "For Emma, who taught us that showing up matters, and for Daniel, who kept showing up." Emma cried when she saw it, surrounded by the whole town who had gathered for the unveiling. This was her life now, full and purposeful and loved. She thought about the woman she had been 5 years ago, standing in front of 17 people at a town meeting, feeling defeated and alone. That woman could never have imagined this future. "Thank you," she whispered to Daniel as they stood together, watching Lily and Sophie play on the new playground equipment. "For everything." "Thank you for being worth showing up for," Daniel said, pulling her close. "Every single day." The years continued to unfold with the gentle rhythm of a life well lived. Mercer Industrial expanded again, adding manufacturing capabilities for renewable energy components. Daniel's commitment to sustainable business practices made the company a leader in green manufacturing, and they attracted attention from national media and other companies looking to emulate their model. Emma's work took her across the region, consulting with towns facing the same challenges Millbrook had overcome. She spoke at conferences and wrote articles about community-driven economic development. But she always came home to Millbrook, to the town that had shaped her and the family that completed her. When Lily started kindergarten, Emma volunteered in her classroom once a week. She watched her daughter make friends with children whose parents had moved to Millbrook for the jobs at Mercer Industrial, whose families had been given hope and opportunity. This was the next generation, growing up in a town that had learned how to fight for itself. Sophie followed 2 years later, just as bright and curious as her sister. The girls adored their father, and Daniel made time for them no matter how busy the company got. He coached Lily's soccer team and attended every school concert and parent-teacher conference. He had learned from his own father that success meant nothing if you missed the moments that mattered. On a crisp October evening, 8 years after that first town meeting, Emma stood at the front of a packed community center. Every seat was filled, people standing along the walls, the energy electric with engagement. She was presenting the 5-year strategic plan for Millbrook's continued development. But before she started, she paused and looked around the room. 8 years ago, I stood in this building and said that nobody shows up anymore, Emma began. There were 17 people here that night, and I felt like we had lost something essential. But one person did show up that night, someone who had no obligation to care about our little town. And because he showed up and kept showing up, everything changed. She found Daniel in the crowd, sitting with Lily on his lap and Sophie holding his hand. He smiled at her, that same warm smile that had captured her heart 8 years ago. "We learned that showing up matters," Emma continued. "That one person caring can spark a movement. That communities are built one choice at a time, one person deciding to fight rather than give up. We learned that together, we can create something worth staying for." The room erupted in applause, and Emma felt that familiar tightness in her chest, the emotion of seeing her work bear fruit. After the meeting, dozens of people wanted to talk to her, to share their stories of how the town's revitalization had changed their lives. She listened to each one, remembering that these were the reasons she did this work. Daniel waited patiently with the girls, who were running around the room with their friends. When Emma finally made it over to them, exhausted and energized in equal measure, he pulled her into a one-armed hug. "You were incredible up there," he said. "Have I told you lately that you're amazing?" "You tell me every day," Emma laughed, "but I never get tired of hearing it." "Good, because I plan to keep telling you for the next 50 years at least," Daniel said. They walked home as a family through the lamplit streets of Millbrook. The town was alive around them, houses glowing with warmth, people out walking dogs or sitting on porches. This was what community looked like, what happened when people decided to care. Later that night, after the girls were asleep and Patricia had retired to her room, Emma and Daniel sat together on their back porch, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill. Stars scattered across the sky above them, and the town was quiet in the comfortable way of a place at peace with itself. "Do you ever think about that first night?" Emma asked. "About how random it was that you came to that meeting?" "It wasn't random," Daniel said thoughtfully. "I was looking for something, even if I didn't know what. I was going through the motions of living without really being alive, and then I heard you speak, and something in me woke up." "I'm glad you showed up," Emma said softly. "I'm glad you were brave enough to say what needed to be said," Daniel replied. "You stood up when nobody else would. You cared when it would have been easier to give up. You saved this town, Emma." "You saved me too." Emma turned to kiss him, a kiss that tasted like coming home, like years of shared mornings and inside jokes and weathering storms together. "We saved each other," she corrected. "That's how the best love stories work." "Is that what this is?" Daniel asked with a smile. "A love story. The very best kind," Emma said. "The kind where two people show up for each other every single day and build a life worth living." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, the town they loved sleeping peacefully around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. There would be meetings and deadlines and the chaos of raising two young girls. There would be setbacks and frustrations and moments of doubt. But there would also be morning coffee shared in the kitchen, and bedtime stories read in silly voices, and stolen kisses in quiet moments. There would be town meetings where people showed up because they believed their voices mattered. There would be new families finding homes in Millbrook, drawn by jobs and opportunity, and a community that cared. There would be laughter and love, and the simple satisfaction of building something meaningful. And through it all, there would be this: two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, who had learned that showing up was the most powerful thing you could do, who had built a love story on the foundation of presence and commitment and care. Emma leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder, feeling his arm tighten around her. In the distance, she could hear the sound of wind chimes from a neighbor's porch, the rustling of leaves in the old oak trees, the quiet symphony of a town at rest. This was home. This was family. This was the life she had fought for and won. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," Daniel replied. "Thank you for teaching me how to show up." Emma smiled in the darkness, thinking about the scared, lonely woman who had stood up at that town meeting 8 years ago and declared that nobody shows up anymore. If she could see herself now, surrounded by love and family and a thriving community, would she believe it was possible? Would she understand that one moment of courage could change everything? The wind picked up, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and wood smoke, and Emma pulled the blanket tighter around them. Inside the house, their daughters slept peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams children dream. Patricia rested in her comfortable room, cared for and cherished. The town stretched out around them, full of people who had found hope and purpose again. This was what happened when someone showed up, when someone decided to care. When two people found each other and chose each other every single day. This was the power of presence, of commitment, of love that showed up not just in grand gestures but in everyday moments. Daniel pressed a kiss to the top of Emma's head, and she felt the familiar warmth of being completely, perfectly loved. They had built this life together, brick by brick, choice by choice, showing up for each other and their community with unwavering dedication. "Ready to go inside?" Daniel asked eventually. "In a minute," Emma said. "I just want to stay here a little longer, with you, with this perfect moment." "Take all the time you need," Daniel said. "I'm not going anywhere," and he meant it. He would be there tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days that followed. He would show up for her, for their daughters, for the life they had built together. That was his promise, made 8 years ago when he walked into a nearly empty town meeting and heard a woman say that nobody shows up anymore. He had shown up. He had kept showing up. And in doing so, he had found everything he never knew he was searching for. Emma took one last look at the stars, then turned to her husband with a smile. "Okay, let's go in. We have a life to live tomorrow." They stood together, folded the blanket, and walked hand in hand back into their warm, loving home. Behind them, the town of Millbrook slept peacefully, a testament to what was possible when people decided to show up, to care, to fight for what mattered. And in the morning, they would wake up and do it all over again, because that was what love looked like. That was what community looked like. That was what a life well lived looked like. One choice at a time, one day at a time, always showing up, always caring, always together. The end of one perfect day and the promise of countless more to come.